Shalom. So today we're going to look at language, dialect, culture, and history. You see, we separate these things so much, and this is part of why we are in the state where we are now. And I'm talking mentally, spiritually, right? Language is just a general thing that a group of people speak, right? However, it consists of a few different things than what we perceive. Now, dialect is just part of a language. And a lot of times people go back and forth with, like, for example, what is the name of the Most High, his son, or, our forefathers before us. We have to understand that, like I said, dialect is just a part of the same thing. So whether you say shalom, 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 whatever you say, you're actually saying the same thing. It's just the dialect is different. Just like I'm from the west coast of Jamaica. The way I speak is different from people who are further south, like in St. Elizabeth. Their way of talking is different, but we understand what we're actually saying. So it's part of the same thing, right? So there's nothing to argue about. For example, let me put it here. If you see this, sha, la, wa, ma. There are 4 letters here, right? They are the same thing. It just depends on the dialect that you use, because some people will say shalom, they give this a O sounding, but there is actually the same letters. So there's nothing to argue about, right? And it's the same with the name of the Most High, right? Again, it's just the dialect that makes it different, but you're actually talking about the same thing, the same person. No, the thing about language is, in this society that we live in, we don't really see how important language is, because what we don't understand is your language and your culture are one and the same thing. The moment you separate your language from your culture, that in itself is problematic. You are already forgetting who you are, and also it is connected with your history, right? So you cannot separate these things. Your identity is embedded in these things. So teaching you history, say you come from a background where you have the Chinese culture and language, teaching your history in a foreign language is not enough, because the way things are in this culture might not be the same as in your ancient Chinese culture. It's the same for us as Hebrews. Things are very different, so we have to understand that these things are very important, because it's part of who you are, what you are. You can go to college all you want, learn all these different languages, and learn history in their language. It still doesn't do much for you or your people in terms of liberation, right? So let's look at this. Language. You have words, right? Like me personally, I speak English words, but I do not speak English language. And that's something that a lot of people need to understand, because two people from, say, England can come here and speak. They're speaking English, and I don't understand a word they're actually saying. This is not our language. They gave it to us, but it's not our language. This is why we pronounce words the way we pronounce words. We don't speak the completion of the words. We don't always use the ending of the words. And for those who are familiar with Patois, you will also recognize this. We don't say the endings. We don't say what is going on. We say wa, aguan. We merge words or we separate, right? And that's how we speak. That's our ancient thing that is in our DNA. And also, these were codes that we would use to beat our slave masters back then. No, it's very hard because every language that we speak are languages that they speak. So whether you speak Polish, French, English, Spanish, Portuguese, whatever it is, they're all their language and they know every aspect of that language, right? For example, here in Jamaica, you have Indians here, you have Chinese here, and Europeans, whatever, right? The Chinese here, they have a greater understanding of our dialect more than the Europeans because the Europeans they might understand somewhat when you speak if you speak slow, but the Chinese they actually talk patois. There's nothing we can say in codes that they cannot interpret. So once you understand a person's language, the grammar, every aspect of it, you already understand everything about that person. And this is the very reason why they do not allow us to speak outside of their European languages or in the school system. They taught us that we came from Africa. Then why the languages that we get to learn are all European languages? Why don't they teach at least one of our African tongue? Because what? It will tie you back to your culture and your history. It will tie you back to your identity. And that is what they don't want. So language is very important. So words, no, you can use words, but it doesn't mean that you speak the language. For example, if I say, parlez-vous français? Those are French words, but I don't speak the actual language. But I know to ask you if you speak it. Or I can say, je ne parle pas français. I can tell you I don't speak it. But just because I use French words, it doesn't mean that I speak the language. It's the same thing with English. I'm using English language to explain, English words to explain all of these, but it doesn't mean that I understand all these different aspects of the language. Right? So the thing about words is that it carries a sound. So you can be familiar with the sound. You can be familiar with the sequence. For example, flesh of animals. You know where to separate these different things, right? So you understand the sequence, the sounds. However, there's another aspect of it, which is the meaning the word carries. For example, when you think about day, right? In this English culture, day is just a whole period of 24 hours. So night is still day for this English culture. However, when you learn back your ancient culture, you would understand that day carries a meaning that is embedded or part of the function of something. So whenever you see the light, that makes you see the manifestations. You can see trees, you can see everything clearly. You know that's day. Round about a period of 12 hours. So in one language or one culture, it might be one thing, but in the other, it is very different. So it goes back to what standpoint you're learning it from, right? So the meaning is also embedded in it, and it tells you exactly what it needs to tell you about the sentence. You can remember the word day, but you can still forget this part of it, which it says it divides the day from the night. Right? It's something that separates two things. So once you lose this part, you only know the word in part. You don't really know the word, like really know the word. Right? Because you have to know the function of it. Right? Now another thing is that this part carries the what we call the lexicon. For example, today, if you hear about meat offering, you're gonna think about getting your lamb, your cow, your beef, your mutton, all of that ready. But from our culture, our ancient language, and our history, when you hear the term meat offering, what do you think about? You think about herbs. You think about wheat. You think about your fine flour that comes from your wheat, and those would be your meat offering. So it's very different. This is why this is very important. Because you read in the Bible now and you read everything about meat offering, and then in your mind, your mental understanding or your mental definition of words based upon this culture, you're thinking meat means flesh of animals. When you read the Bible with the ancient culture, your mental thought process would be herbs. It's very different. So the reason why there are so many problems with the understanding of the Bible is we all think in English and try to understand something that was written with a different intent or from a different cultural standpoint. So now, when we read the word day in the Bible, what comes to our mind? 24 hours. Because we're trying to see it through the perception or the lenses of the English culture. Right? You say sundown is the ending, is the beginning of a new day. So, what is actually ending? So, you're saying that a day is ending when the sun is going down, and then a new day is going to start. So, when one day ends, you're saying another day starts. Where is night? You see, that doesn't make logical or spiritual sense, because there is day and there is night. One ends, then one begins. So if the ending of your day is a sunset and the starting of your day is a sunset, where does the night actually fall? So you see, that's the problem with learning your history from a different language, because in the language comes a cultural thought process, right? Now the next aspect of the language is you have the morphology, which goes back to the forms with the meaning, just as we're talking about with the day, right? The day, it's not just the word, but it carries a function in it, right? Which I'll also explain further down when it comes down to this part. Now, for example, you have the word friend. The root word of this word friend is friend. Now here you have another word, friendship. So friend is here and ship is added to it. Friendship. But it's not the same root here. Friend is not the root word in the word friendship. It is not a stem of this word. Right? Now when you look at the word friendships, what happens? Friendship is one word, and the S at the end it carries another grammatical function. Let's look at it from the Hebrew standpoint. Allah in English means power or God. Allahayam in Hebrew is the same thing, plural form, right? Now you can say gods or powers. No. In English, the English thought process does not come with the thought more than one God, many gods, right? So here's the confusion. In your culture, in the English culture, you are saying that there's only one God, but at the same time, you're saying that people should not worship other gods. So if there's only one God, how is it that people could worship other gods? You see, that still would make logical or spiritual sense. we understand that there are many powers, there are many gods. I'm not talking about an object. No, like when they made the molten calf, that's an idol object. But the actual thing in the heavens that we call today April or Taurus or Baal, that is the actual God. We're not talking about the objects made by hands, right? So, yes, there are many gods, but this again, like I said, when you understand something from a different cultural thought process, there are so many errors because our people really don't understand the language. They understand the word language, but not the actual language itself, right? So back to this Allah Alahayam, you can have the power of a king. You know, the king can command that, okay, go and make war with this person or spare the life of this person or, do whatever. Kings have such and such power. But the power of God is not the same as the power of a king, because the king does not have the power to let the sun remain where it is, right? So this is when you get into the morphology of the language, right? Now, as for the semantics, I'm just going to use a simple example which everyone is familiar with. Women. When you're dealing with the semantics, you are actually trying to figure out the intention of the speaker, what the message that they're actually conveying to you. And this is why sometimes you have to read into what people are saying, right? Or understand it from their standpoint. For example, a woman will say to you, oh, the AC is so cold. Okay, she could be telling you that the AC is cold. That's one. Or she can be telling you to turn off the AC. And this is really how women communicate, right? They don't really state their intent like most men do. Men will say, right? No, most women, they speak this way, and a lot of them are not even so aware that that's what they really do, right? So it's about what the person is really saying to you, right? So you go out with a woman, she's cold, she's not gonna say, can I have your jacket? She's just gonna say, oh, it's so cold tonight. You don't know if she's just saying she's cold or she wants your jacket. You have to figure that out, right? So this we understand the semantics when it comes down to the actual language. Now you have the syntax of the language, you have the grammar, which are not really the same. They're similar, but they're not actually the same thing, right? For example, the syntax, you have the structure of the sentence. The grammar, you have the rules that govern the language. For example, in English, when we hear the term father, what comes to our minds, or let's say what comes to the mind of some women? When you think in the English culture, you think of a male parent. You don't really see the value or the significance in it because it's just a male parent. Wherein, from a Hebraic thought process, when you hear the word Abba, in the word itself comes a function. Abba, the strength, Ba, the host. Father, Abba, the strength of the host. It is already in there. So, in the Hebrew culture, a woman cannot think herself to be a man. Oh, the daddy is not there, so I'm celebrating Father's Day because I'm doing all this. That happens in the English culture. That is possible in the English culture. From the Hebrew culture, that thought process does not exist because Abba is actually telling you already what the thing is that you're speaking about. So, like I said, your language, your culture, and the history that comes with it is very important, especially in this time of what you call it, the awakening. We're becoming conscious, but we want to stick to English. It's not just a language as we would think. It's not just words. It is way more than that. It is a thought process. And the way you think is how you will do things. So it's important for us to dissect. We have a part of the brain called the intellect. You cut, you dissect, and you separate. This thought process belongs to this language and the culture of the language. This thought process belongs to this language and the culture of the language. So there's a cultural way of thinking, right? And we know English comes with, like I always say, a cognitive dissonance. You think one way, but what you do things the opposite. Hebrew is a verbal language. Everything is functional. Everything is in its action form. So by the deed, you can tell what the word is. You don't need a dictionary. The word itself tell you what it is. English does not have that. This is why you woman can just wear pants and drop the pants and just like a man and actually believe she's a man. In the English culture, no, you're still seeing your period. You still can have babies. You understand? Your functions don't change. Mm? You cannot say you are a man and at the end of a month you're bleeding for 7 days. You cannot say you're a man and if you lay with another man you can get pregnant. No, the function is in the thing itself. Right? Shalom.